Hi fellow musicians, my name is Hammy. In this tutorial, I will cover everything you need to know about writing realistic piano parts for your orchestra and in your DAW. To establish my credibility, I've been playing the piano since I was 4 years old, and I've received professional training before I transitioned into composition. Here's a video of a performance from my peak years as a pianist. Unfortunately, it's one of the few recordings I have, as social media wasn't popular back then. Now I occasionally share videos of my piano playing on my Instagram, so feel free to check them out if you're interested. The choice of MIDI keyboard plays a crucial role in achieving realistic piano sound. As a pianist and composer, I can tell you that the feel of the keyboard is just as important as the sound you create. Over the years, I've worked with several different keyboards, including models from Complete Control and M-Audio, but I eventually settled on Arturia because of the exceptional feel of its weighted keys. When it comes to replicating the touch and response of a real piano, weighted keys are a must. The key action should provide resistance and allow for nuanced control of dynamics, much like an acoustic piano. This is especially important when you're aiming to capture the subtleties of a live performance. If you're serious about getting as close as possible to the experience of playing a real piano, I would recommend investing into an 88-key weighted keyboard. By the way, the MIDI keyboard I'm using is Arturia Keylab 61 MK3. In the rest of the tutorial, I will show you how to achieve a lifelike piano sound regardless of the controller you're using. Whether you're using a short-range keyboard or a non-weighted keyboard, I will help you to get the most out of your setup. Some of you might be thinking, but Hammy, I'm not from a piano background and I don't even know how to play the piano. I know many of you watching are from a guitar, woodwind, or even percussion background, and that's totally okay. And I will teach you how to effectively write piano parts in your orchestra, no matter which background you're from. Let's use a piano MIDI file as practice material. If you like to follow along and use the same file, I provided a link in the description to download the score from my Muse score page. Here we have the MIDI file. Next, I'm gonna load a piano VST. To start, I will keep the MIDI track as a reference and I will use the second track to record myself playing the same melody on my keyboard. So I'm gonna load another piano VST on the second track. Here's your first tip. It's usually a good idea to record yourself playing rather than manually editing the MIDI notes. When you play by hand, there are subtle nuances that can't be captured through MIDI editing alone. These small details like slight variations in timing, velocity, and articulation are what make a performance sound lifelike. You might be thinking, but my keyboard isn't great and it's hard to control the velocity while I play. That's perfectly okay. We will do more editing on the notes later. So now let me record a section of the music. One thing you might have noticed is that I used a sustained pedal switch, and if you don't have a sustained pedal switch, you can easily use automation in your DAW. In Reaper, for instance, the sustained pedal switch is CC64. Here's a quick rule to keep in mind. In nearly 99% of piano music and piano writing, the sustained pedal is used. So before applying any delay or reverb effects to your piano sound, make sure to first use the sustained pedal. Another important rule is to avoid using the sustained pedal when playing semitones, for example. Semitone intervals already create tension, and sustaining them can result in a dissonant sound and lack of clarity. If your goal is to create an eerie sound effect, you might choose to break this rule. Another rule is that when it comes to chord changes, the standard approach is to lift and reapply the pedal with each new harmony. This keeps the sound clean and prevents unwanted dissonance from mixing the notes of the previous chord with the new one. And here's an example. Notice that I'm reapplying the pedal each time I change chords, which helps maintain clarity and prevent muddiness in the sound. Once we have the piano part recorded, I will go in and correct the timing, adjust the notes, and tweak the velocity to ensure the sound is smooth, and the rhythm is consistent, and there are no jarring notes. So this note is a bit too early. And this note's here as well.
2 hours later.
When we compose, it's common to quantize all the notes first, then apply a bit of humanization to the velocity, note duration, and timing. However, with piano music specifically, simply applying humanization after quantization will likely make the performance sound robotic. So instead of select all the notes and applying a generic humanization, we want to skip this step and manually adjust the notes. Now let's discuss some key principles for the manual process of humanizing piano MIDI notes. For example, the main melody should generally be played louder than the accompanying chords or non-melodic elements. Taking this piece as an example, we can see that the right hand is playing the melody. Therefore, we want the velocity of right hand notes to be slightly louder than the left hand. Another example from this piece, which comes from waltz music, where the left hand downbeat, usually the bottom notes, should be louder than the notes on the second and third beats. This reflects the dance rhythm, where the first beat symbolizes the dancer landing on the ground, followed by 2 smaller steps in the simple triple time of a waltz. Different genres of piano music requires different performance techniques. It's not always about selecting all the notes and applying humanization. Sometimes we need to rely more on our ears and experience, on the natural feel and the playing of the instrument, rather than over-relying on mechanical programming or the engineering of the sound. When it comes to writing for the piano, remember that the player has 2 hands, but each hand has its own limitations. While some scales are easier to play, like a major broken chord or a major seventh, others can be trickier, such as there are different fingerings you could try, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. But the general rule is to avoid having the thumb jump to a black key when moving upward, since the thumb is the shortest finger. This is not good. It's often too difficult to reach those keys comfortably. This is where you will need to consider alternative fingerings. Of course, there are hundreds of rules in piano playing, and violating these rules can make your piano passage sound less realistic. If you're a good piano player, you can always play the passage you've written to see how realistic it feels. Are the notes jumping all over between the octaves, or is your player somehow an alien with 8 fingers? But what if you're not a piano player? It's impossible to learn all the rules in such a short time. How can you ensure that your writing makes sense? The answer is simple. Start by writing single notes for both hands. This will always keep your writing grounded and playable. A fundamental truth about orchestration is that you can't master every instrument. Unless you're an expert on playing that instrument, it's hard to write something truly complex or flawless for it. A useful guide when writing for an instrument you're not familiar with. What I mean by not familiar with is you've learned its orchestration rules but haven't played that instrument. It's just the same as you can't claim you're able to design a football if you haven't played a football yet. The general guideline when it comes to writing for an instrument you're not familiar with is to avoid writing more than 2 notes at once. And of course, some instruments like the flute or trombone can only play 1 note at a time. Many of today's great soundtracks rely on minimalist and repeating patterns. For example, Hans Zimmer's Interstellar. Other examples like Henry Jackman's X-Men Magneto theme and John Carpenter's Halloween theme, they're all rooted in just a few notes repeat and evolve, and you can apply this same idea to piano writing. Achieving a realistic piano sound starts with choosing the right VST. The one I use and highly recommend is PianoTech 8 by Modart. If you haven't tried it yet, you should. What makes PianoTech stand out is the incredible level of control it offers, allowing you to fine-tune every detail of the piano sound. You can tweak everything from microphone placement and mallet bounce to blending modes, layering, note effects, equalizers, and even micro-tuning, adjusting characteristics typically shaped during the piano crafting and manufacturing process. These features allow you to shape the piano sound in any way you can imagine, even for horror film piano sound. For this piano piece, I'll be using the Grand Shigeru Kawai SKEK. Let's explore how different microphone positions affect the sound. So let's click on the microphone button. This will bring up the microphone panel, where we can experiment with different mics. The window in the middle provides a 3D representation of the space, allowing us to move the camera around the room. From the top and front views, we can adjust the microphones in a full 360-degree environment. This is a fantastic feature because microphone positioning plays a crucial role in making the piano feel like it truly belongs in the space you are creating. I really like how this sounds now, so I will keep it this way. Of course, there are many other settings you can tweak. For example, the equalizer, note effects, and effects, and etc. PianoTech 8, I'd say it's one of the most versatile piano VSTs. It gives you everything you need to create any type of piano sound imaginable. Since I'm composing in the style of a Chopin waltz, I want to give the piano a more vintage feel. Chopin was active in the early 19th century, so let's replicate that era's sound by adjusting the condition setting toward the warm side. This is a really interesting feature. It lets you time travel and make the piano sound aged and characterful. Now let's have a listen. That's a little bit too much. To further enhance the vintage sound, I will slightly shorten the string lengths. This gives the instrument a more intimate, old-world feeling. Now let's go to Effects. In the Reverb tab, I will select the Vintage Reed Reverb 1. And I'm going to adjust the room size to make the sound feel more enclosed and personal. One more feature I'd like to highlight is the morph function. This allows you to blend two different instruments together. Let's try something unconventional. Let's combine a piano with a guitar. it sounds a bit like a harpsichord, which is quite interesting. Of course, Piano Tech has an incredible range of features and functions, and while we won't be able to cover every detail today, I believe we found the right tone for this piece. Now let's have a listen to the section we've just worked out. Thanks for watching this tutorial. I hope you've learned a lot and ready to create your own realistic piano sound. Feel free to comment below if you have any questions, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.